welcome to Cloud on Air, live webinars from Google Cloud. My name is Leah Jarrett, and I'm a developer advocate with Google Cloud. You're watching a how-to webinar session on how to go from database to dashboard by connecting to BigQuery and analyzing your data in Looker. You can ask questions anytime by submitting them in the box below this screen. We have Googlers on standby that can help answer them. So let's go ahead and get started. Looker is a modern business intelligence platform that leverages the power of your data warehouse. With Looker's single source of truth data model, LookML, analysts can record their business knowledge using SQL in a Git version controlled repository. Looker then leverages this LookML model to actually create SQL queries and send them back to the data warehouse on your behalf. In the Looker platform, you can jump in to build out dashboards, explore your data, operationalize insights, and even build out custom applications. In today's session, we're going to start by connecting our BigQuery project to Looker. We're then going to go ahead and auto-generate a LookML model from our database schema. Once we have our model, we can start exploring our data and adding visualizations to a dashboard for our team to use. So let's go ahead and get started. Here I'm in the BigQuery console where I already have some data loaded into my retail data set. Let's imagine that I'm working for a retail company and we have some tables that represent our different channels, customers, products, stores, and our transactions. We also have some out-of-date tables that we've prefixed with this old. Here I'm looking at my transaction detail table, where I'm able to see each transaction that's been placed by one of my customers, and I can even see the individual line items for each item that's been ordered. In BigQuery, we've structured this as an array of different records, so there can be multiple line items in each order. Now that we have our data already set up and structured in BigQuery, we're ready to connect it to Looker. I'm going to hop over into my Looker environment and start in the admin panel where I want to create a brand new database connection. In the Connections tab, I can see any databases that have already been connected to Looker. To start a new connection, I can click Add Connection, give the connection a name, and select the dialect, in this case, Google BigQuery Standard SQL. Here we'll specify the project name where we want our queries to be run through and the default dataset that we'll leverage. We'll need to supply Looker with a service account email and JSON file so that Looker can leverage this service account to actually run SQL queries through BigQuery. In order to do so, this service account needs to have BigQuery job user permission on the project that we specify. We'll also need to give this service account BigQuery viewer access on the datasets that we want to query within Looker. In my case, I've already set up a connection to my BigQuery project. So the next thing we want to do is actually create a brand new project for our Looker data model, LookML. In Looker, I can see everything having to do with LookML in my Develop tab. So I can see the different projects that I've already set up. And to create a brand new project, I can go ahead to Manage Projects and click New LookML Project. First, I'll need to enter development mode, which means that now I can start making changes to my model. In Looker, I'll give my project a name, in this case, Retail, and I'm going to actually generate a model from my database schema. I'll select the connection, which in this case is called Leah BigQuery Dev, and I'll select all tables that are living in my retail schema or dataset. Additionally, I want to ignore any tables that have this old prefix because they're not really useful to my organization anymore, so I don't need to include them in my data model. Now I'll click Create Project, and Looker is going to go ahead and automatically generate this new LookML project for me. You can think of LookML as a collection of different text files that lay out the different business logic that your organization will use. By having a single source of truth for your business logic, you'll be able to ensure that everybody in your organization is working off of the same definitions for their KPIs and metrics. Looker has two different types of files that we're usually leveraging in LookML. The first one that I'll go through are these view files. A view file is going to be an abstraction of a table living in our database. In this case, we have our customers table. Looker goes ahead and automatically generates one dimension for each column that's living in our table. For example, our ID column. And since this is the primary key of our table, Looker's also gone ahead and noted that along with the data type of that column. Each one of our fields is going to have this SQL parameter. And this is what's used to actually define our field and create the query that's sent back to BigQuery on our behalf. You'll notice this $ curly bracket notation, and that's what we call the substitution operator. The substitution operator allows us to substitute in prior definitions instead of repeating ourselves in multiple places. In this case, we've already defined our table name up here. So now Looker knows that our ID for customers comes from retail.customers.id. Dimensions you can think of as row-level attributes or groupable fields, fields that you can include in the group by statement of a query. But Looker also goes ahead and generates measures. Measures are aggregations across multiple fields. In this case, Looker's generated a count measure for us will allow us to count multiple rows grouped by any of the dimensions that we select. We could also add measures like average, median, max, min that allow us to do those aggregations. Now let's jump into our model file. Our model file allows us to create relationships between these different view files. For example, here we've created an Explore. One Explore is like a data playground that our business users will be able to leverage to explore the data and get new insights. This Explore begins with a transaction detail view, and Looker has already automatically created these joins for us. What this means is that in our Explore environment, we'll be able to select fields from stores, customers, channels, or our transaction detail line items, and Looker will automatically create that join for us whenever necessary, using the data that's specified here. Aside from selecting the type of join it is, and the SQL keys that we want to use for the join, we also specify the cardinality between the two views, so that Looker knows how to aggregate without double counting in different places. Now let's go ahead and see what this Explorer actually looks like. I'm going to hop into my Transaction Detail Explorer and pull it up in my other tab. Like I mentioned before, our Explorer environment is a data playground where we can slice and dice our metrics and get new insights from our data. Here I can see each one of my views that's been added to my Explorer. And within each view, I can see the different fields that I've defined using my LookML model. Now let's start building a query. Let's say that we want to get a count of all of our orders by each channel. We can bring in our channel name and then maybe go ahead and bring in our count from our transaction detail. If I click Run, Looker will go ahead and send the SQL query back to BigQuery on our behalf. And in the SQL panel, I can see the actual query that Looker is sending over to BigQuery. Here, we're grabbing our channel's name as it's defined in our LookML and using that measure to do a count star of all of our different orders. Next, we're using that join information specified in our Explore definition in the model file to actually join retail.channels onto our transaction detail. Let's go ahead and poke at the results. Here we can see how many transactions have occurred for each one of our different sales channels. Opening up the visualization tab, I can see the breakdown in a bar chart or even change the visualization type. Here I'll make it into a pie chart. And now that I have this visualization, I'm ready to save it to a dashboard. I'll hop up over here, click Save to Dashboard, and I'm going to start a brand new dashboard that we'll call Retail. Let's give our tile a name and say Order Breakdown by Channel, and save it to our dashboard. Now I'm going to open up this Retail dashboard in our other tab to see how this is looking. In this dashboard, I can click Edit to resize my tile and drag it and drop it to wherever I want. Now let's head back to the Explorer. I've already looked at my channel breakdown for all of my orders. But now I might want to see the actual total sale price that I've made from all of these orders. Looking through my fields, I can see that sales price is a dimension that I can use in my query. But if I go ahead and bring this in, we'll see we're just getting a distinct value of all the different sales prices that we have in our database. That's because this is a dimension, so it's being used in the group by statement of our query. Instead, I'm going to want to go ahead and create an aggregate version of this sale price field. Back in my LookML model, I'll hop over to the transaction detail page, scroll down to go ahead and create a brand new measure. And I'll call this total sale price. We'll give it a type sum, and then we'll tell Looker the column that we actually want to use for our aggregation. In this case, sale price. Now let's come back to my Explore environment. I'm going to clear out my canvas and refresh my page so that I can see the new field that I've added. Now we can see our total sale price and visualize it as a single number once the query has finished running. But this is a lot of numbers, and I probably don't need all this information. I'm going to go back to my model and actually tell Looker to change the value format to use US dollars so that it knows to add a $sign and round it up to 2 decimal points. I'll refresh my page again to see the changes come through. Now, because Looker is a completely web-based application, it's really easy for me to flip between tabs, making changes as I go, simply refreshing to see those changes live. I'm going to go ahead and add this tile to my dashboard as well. I'll call it Total Sale Price. Now that I have total sale price, I might want to drill a little bit deeper and figure out what our gross margin is. I can see that in my data we have our cost and our sale price for each one of our transaction line items. So let's build a new field where we're defining gross margin for our entire organization. First, I'm going to go ahead and start with a brand new dimension. I'll call this dimension gross margin. We're going to say that it's a type number. And in our SQL, we're going to be able to define a brand new field. Now this SQL statement right here will understand any functions or queries that your dialect of the database can understand. In our case, we just want to do a simple subtraction. We want to take our sale price and then we want to subtract the cost. We'll save our changes, come over to the Explorer, and again refresh the page to see gross margin live. Now that we have gross margin, we want to go one step further and maybe calculate the percentage of gross margin. For example, what percentage of the sale price did we make? Let's go ahead and again create another dimension. We'll call this gross margin percent. Again, this will be a type number. And now in SQL, we're going to use our gross margin, but actually divide it by our sale price. Now in this case, if sale price is 0, we might get a divide by 0 error. So to prevent this, I'm going to wrap it in a null if function, which tells BigQuery to make this value null if our sale price is equal to 0. Again, this is possible because we can leverage any functions that we've already defined in BigQuery, including out-of-the-box functions like null if or user-defined functions that we share with our organization. I'm also going to go ahead and change this value format to be percent, so we don't have to look at all those decimal places. Now that we have our dimension, I probably want to create a measure for this as well, where I can say, I want to see the average gross margin percentage. I'll go ahead and make this a type average. And in our SQL statement, I'll now leverage our gross margin percent dimension that we created earlier. I'm again going to use this value format name, so it's represented as a percent. And I'm going to go ahead and save. Now, one thing that you'll note is that I've been using this $ curly bracket notation quite a bit. Here, I'm using it to define or to leverage our already defined sale price and subtract our already defined cost. Here, I'm using it to leverage our already defined gross margin and our already defined sale price. As you can see, I'm reusing my definitions in multiple places, which means that we're all going to always be working off of the same core set of definitions. What this also means is that if our sale price column changes in the future, maybe it becomes sale price US dollar, I'll be able to change it in one place and have it flow through to all of my different definitions and also flow through to all of my dashboards that I've created. Now back in my Explorer, I can come back and again refresh my page to grab my average gross margin. Bring in average gross margin, and maybe I want to see this sliced by the category of my item. As this query is running, I can open up the visualization panel and start to customize my visualization. Maybe I want to do something like get rid of my axis names to add in some more space. And I can also go ahead and get rid of grid lines. In the series panel, I can change the color palette. Here I've already specified my Google collection, but you can add your own company's colors to a palette that can be reused across your dashboards. Now that I have this visualization, I want to go ahead and again save it to my dashboard. We'll call this gross margin by category. Great. And let's head back over to our dashboard to see how things are looking. I'll refresh and see all the tiles that I've added. Let's go ahead and move some things around by moving my total sale price up here, maybe my gross margin, bar chart up here. And I can even add in a text tile to help clarify what this dashboard is or give some users instructions on how to use it. Let's add a new tile that says, My Retail Dashboard. Use this dashboard to understand sales across channels. I'll drag this up to the top so that now all my dashboard users understand what this dashboard is useful for. Now let's head back to my Explore environment. One thing I might want to do is try to understand the average basket size for my users. But if you think about how we would do that in BigQuery, I would first need to do a count of all of my orders for a count of all of my line items for each order, and then write another query against that. I don't have a count for line items yet, so let me go ahead and add it in. If I look at this view file here that we've created just for our individual line items, I can scroll down and now create another measure that says count. But just calling it count might make it a little confusing for our users. So I'll go ahead and add a label that says number of items ordered. And all I need to tell Looker is a type count. Now if I come back into my Explore, let me refresh the page and grab in my number of items ordered for each one of my different transactions. But again, if I was doing this in BigQuery, I would now need to write another query against this table to get an average for each one of these orders. In Looker, we can accomplish this two-pass SQL query by creating a derived table. Our derived table will become the inner part of the SQL query, or the total number of items ordered for each one of our transactions, and then we can use it in our Explore like any other table. I can come up here and say getLookML and grab the derived table syntax right from my Explore environment. I'm going to go back to my project and start by creating a brand new view. We'll call this basket size. In basket size, I can paste the view LookML that I just copied from my Explore, simply adding my basket size name for the view. If we take a look at what's happening here, we're actually deriving a brand new table instead of simply referring to a table name that already exists in BigQuery. You can think of this kind of as a view or leveraging a CTE. Here we're showing our Explore source and actually defining our fields that are used in our derived table in LookML. Again, this is going to ensure a single source of truth for our organization. So if our transaction ID changes along the way, we don't need to update it in multiple places. We would just go back to our transaction detail view and be able to update it in our transaction ID definition. I'm going to relabel this field and say basket size. And since we already have transaction ID available in our Explore, I'm actually going to hide this field. One thing I'm also going to do is tell Looker that this field is the primary key, since we'll only have one transaction ID unique to each row. Now that we've created our brand new view based on our derived table, we're going to go ahead and join it into our model. First, I'll drag it and drop it so it's nested in our views folder. Now, I want to go ahead and add this into my Explore by joining it onto my transactions detail view. I'll specify my view name, which we called it basket size. I'm going to specify the relationship, which in this case should be 1-to-1 because there's only one transaction ID in our base table and one transaction ID in our basket size. And on the SQL, I'm going to specify the part of our SQL statement that is used in the on clause of our join. In this case, I'll just say transaction detail dot transaction ID is going to be equal to our basket size dot transaction ID. Now if I go back to my Explorer, I should be able to clear out my canvas and refresh the page to see that new view been added. Since I hid the transaction ID, the only field I have here is my basket size. Coming in, we can open up this SQL statement and see that Looker is using this to leverage CTEs in BigQuery to create a basket size table that we can then refer to in our query. Now that I have a dimension representing my basket size, I can go ahead and create measures off of this dimension, just like we've been doing. For example, looking at average basket size. Let's go back to my basket size view and go ahead and create a brand new measure called average basket size. And we will say that we're doing an average over this count field. And we will tell Looker it is a type average. Come back to my Explore page, refresh the page, and now we should be able to see our average basket size. One thing I might want to do is see how this average basket size has changed over time. In Looker, we already represent different time fields by breaking them up into time frames. This makes it really easy to do stuff that's pretty annoying using regular SQL queries, which is translating between different types of timestamps and aggregating at different time frames. Here I can see how our basket size has changed each week. And I might want to represent this as a line chart. And maybe I just want to filter this to say that we only want to look at orders that have happened in the past 6 weeks. One thing we might also want to do is add another field to slice this view by. For example, maybe we're interested in understanding how our basket size differs between our genders. So let's go ahead and add a pivot by gender so we can see our line chart broken out into 2 different lines. One thing we can also do is go ahead and filter out those null fields that we're seeing. And I'll go ahead and add this to my dashboard as well. Basket size by gender. Great. Now I'm going to go ahead and go back to my dashboard. So far, we've added a bunch of tiles that will be really useful for our organization to make better decisions around marketing or how they're approaching customers. To make things even more compelling, we might go ahead and start to add different drill fields. For example, if I'm clicking on total sales, I might be able to see each individual order detail for every sale that's been placed. In order to do this, we'll go back to LookML and add what we call drill fields onto these measures. I'm going to go back to my total sale price measure that I've already created, specify drill fields, and then tell Looker the different things that I want to be listed in our drill fields menu, or the different fields that I want displayed for the user. In this case, I might specify SKU, gross margin percent, and our sale price. Now if I come back to my dashboard and refresh my page, If I drill into my total sale price, I'll be able to see each one of those fields represented for my user. Aside from adding drill fields, there are a couple of other things I might want to do to make this dashboard more impactful for our users. The first thing I might want to do is go back and add additional labels or descriptions to our fields. For example, gross margin percent, we might want to add a description that tells users how this was calculated. This represents the percentage of our sale price. Now, if I come back to my Explorer, I can see those descriptions represented as tooltips for our users. Let's go ahead and find our gross margin and see that this tells us our description underneath the field and as a tooltip where we can see the description of our field. We might want to also add descriptions to our dashboards. For example, adding a description to this total sales. If I come and edit my dashboard, I can go ahead and add a note that says, this is the sum of all sale price for items that were ordered. And maybe make it on an icon hover. One thing I want to talk about is how we really get the best of BigQuery within Looker. If I flip back to BigQuery for a second, we can see that our transaction detail table is actually partitioned and queried, or clustered rather. So we can see that it's clustered based on store ID and it's partitioned based on our transaction timestamp. We can leverage these partitions and clusters to make performance better for our users within our Looker dashboard. We'll do this by adding filters to the dashboard. Let's go ahead, edit our dashboard, and click Filters. If we add a filter, we might want to start by adding a transaction date. This way we're leveraging that transaction timestamp partition column. In transaction detail, I can go ahead and select the date time frame. And maybe we want to default this to say the last 30 days. We might also want to go ahead and add a filter for our store because our table is clustered on store. I'll go ahead and add in our store ID as a filter. And we can change the control, maybe making it a checkbox. Now my end users can come in and change the filters to the appropriate time frame or store that they're interested in. As they're coming into the dashboard, they'll still have the ability to jump into the exploration environment so that they can slice and dice the data to their own needs. Before going any further, I've made a lot of changes to my model and I really want to save my progress. If I head back to LookML, I can see that in the right-hand corner, I have an option to configure Git. This allows me to connect my LookML model straight to a GitHub repo. I can specify the repository URL and get set up with my own Git branch to work on. Here, I'll set up a bare repository instead of hosting it remotely. If I go back to the project, you can now see that I'm working on my own personal branch. If I validate my LookML, I can actually go ahead and commit these changes to our master branch, making changes based on retail data. This allows me and the other analysts on my team to each do work in our own branches and save and share whenever necessary. We can have different review processes for reviewing merges and new branch additions. And when we're ready, we'll push it up to production so that everyone in our organization will be able to access our changes as they're accessing the dashboard. When I exit development mode, I can actually see my dashboard on the master version of our repository. Now that I've created this dashboard, I want to make sure that my users have access to this information wherever they need it. I can go ahead and schedule delivery of this dashboard to users' emails or by sending it to other applications, either through a webhook or through native integrations that we offer. Aside from using our out-of-the-box actions, you can also create your own custom data actions that takes data from a dashboard or from the Explorer and feeds it into operational workflows. One example might be if I'm on the marketing team and want to send this information to Marketo to create a brand new campaign based on users' order information. I might start by exploring from this tile right here and deciding to filter based on one of our channel names. For example, just people who used in-store checkout. Now, instead of looking at the count of all of our orders by channel, I actually want to see a count of all of my orders by my customer. So I'll go ahead and bring in my customer ID. Now that I have a list of all of my different customers who have made orders using the in-store self-checkout in the past 30 days, I can send this information to Marketo or another marketing platform to target them for an ad that makes self-checkout much easier. So let's go ahead and save this visualization, or this table in this case, to my personal folder, in-store self-checkout users. And I can specify that I want to send all this information to Marketo and even set up a schedule so that new customers that have purchased their orders using self-checkout are added to this campaign on a daily or a weekly basis. As a next step, I might want to go even further by integrating Looker with other BigQuery features like using GIS functionality to do geospatial analysis or leveraging BigQuery machine learning to create, train, and predict based on machine learning models created within BigQuery. So I hope you go and check it out. And now you know how to go from database to dashboard, connecting your BigQuery project to Looker, generating a model, and exploring your data. Thanks for tuning in. Please visit cloudonair.withgoogle.com for more hands-on learning, training, and demos from Google Cloud experts. See you next time.